What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Binge Empire podcast. This is Brian here with my co hosts, producer Dave and Kyle. And today we're talking season 2, episode 4 of the hit video game turned Max TV series, The Last of Us. I guess I'll just do my little spiel right now. Maybe the slowest of the 4 episodes, and maybe slowest isn't the right word. I should say I had the least amount of notes from this episode. So I feel like it was a little bit straightforward. Episode 3 also kind of felt like okay, a lot just happened. Let's get us to the next part. So a transition episode. And I still kind of felt like we were in that transition. We get a little bit more of this Isaac character, maybe a little bit more of the scars that we saw. And of course, this developing relationship between Ellie and Dina. But overall, a pretty entertaining episode. What did you guys think?
I think this might have been the most uneven episode to me. I feel like it started very well. Loved the cold open. Loved the introduction of Isaac and all of that, and the exploration of the wolves and the scars, or the Seraphites. The Ellie and Dina stuff just felt like the episode ended, and I was kind of like, I don't really even understand what happened in the last 15 to 20 minutes here. Like, I didn't really know how to take it and how I actually felt about it. And then when I went to rewatch it, I was like, I don't even really feel like rewatching this. So I think it was the worst episode of the season to me. It should be interesting to still talk about, and worst of, I would say, all good episodes. So I'm just kind of interested at this point to get through the scenes and then kind of see where we're all sitting with the different things that happened.
I'm a little bit shocked, if I'm being honest. I did not expect between you and B-Toms that these thoughts would be so negative on the episode. I actually thought this was a really good episode compared to last week's episode. I know, Kyle, last week you thought last week's episode was really good. I thought it was slow. Seems like we've kind of flip-flopped here. I don't know. I thought the introduction to Isaac's character was really awesome. It left a lot of mystery into the fact that I am now more excited to get into his character later on. The scars, I think that rivalry has definitely piqued my interest a lot. I will agree, though, that the Dina and Ellie stuff felt like a lot of it came from left field a little bit, and I'm glad that it ended up working out this way, but the steps to get there felt a little lacking. But overall, I still thought it was a phenomenal episode. I'm super invested in Isaac's character and the scars. And it was a star-studded cast this episode. I was not expecting some of the faces that we got in this episode that we did.
Yeah, so why don't we just get right into that kind of cold open, which takes place in the Seattle QZ, the quarantine zone, about 11 years ago. Maybe less, 7 years ago, because I think it's supposed to take place in 2025. Anyway, it's 2018 in the Seattle QZ. Kyle,
So
yes?
11 is correct, because we've gotten a lot of people that reached out that were like, because we talked last episode about what time it is, and they said that the banner at the New Year's party in episode 1 said 2029.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
And there was a time skip between season 1 and season 2, so maybe season 1 was like early 2020s, and the time skip got us to, you just said 2029?
Yes, that could be me misremembering what the comments said, but yes, it was later than we had been discussing on the last episode. So I think you're right with the original 11 years ago with 2018 about.
Okay, well, thank you as always for the fact checking in the comments. We do appreciate that. But this flashback is taking place in 2018, and it's going to be what we find out to be Isaac is the commanding officer of this small little Fedra squadron, and I didn't look it up, which maybe is bad podcasting, but it is Josh Peck telling us this story, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it's always so funny seeing Josh Peck swearing, because I mean, his character is obviously Drake and Josh and so innocent, and whenever he swears, it just is always like, oh, perk my ears up. It's like Josh Peck swearing. It's so funny. But yeah, he was a solid side character that, again, that was one of the faces that I was not expecting in this episode. I wasn't even expecting I'm going to say Bernard, but that's his
Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah, I was not expecting Jeffrey Wright either this season. So this was a great start to the episode for me in terms of just I recognize these faces. I know right away that I should buckle up and give them my attention.
I don't know how much more of Josh Peck we're gonna get, but
Yeah.
he's sharing this story, which is just painting the picture that Fedra maybe isn't the best people, and maybe they are not actually the defenders of average citizens that they fancy themselves to be. He's going over the story that he found a group of 3 people, which he refers to as voters, disseminating pamphlets, which he thought originally was wolf material, but he said, it was just some religious BS. Anyway, I lined him up, and this guy Greenberg comes and says, disseminating, what, you're jerking off in the streets or whatever. And Greenberg, who is assumedly his commanding officer, like smashes one of their faces into the wall. And I think the story ends with them executing the 3 people. One of the maybe greener troops in the van, after the story is done and everybody's yucking it up, having a great time, asks, hey, why do you call them voters? Josh Peck is dismissive and says, it's just what we call them. Who cares? And that is when Jeffrey Wright's Isaac chirps up and says, well, because we took away their rights, one of which was their right to vote, and some dude just came along, started calling them voters just to kind of mock them that they no longer have the right to vote. So this whole story is just a little bit of world building. This truck eventually gets stopped by this group of townspeople that are kind of just filling the streets, and Isaac goes out to meet them. He calls out this same kind of young soldier, and it seems like Isaac was expecting the leader of these townspeople named Hanrahan, I believe. Mm-hmm. So Hanrahan, and they have a little bit of an agreement. He says, hey, yo, is it on? Are you? Yes, I'm me. He turns heel, throws a grenade into the truck, thus killing the Fedras. The woman says, welcome to the fight. And he looks at this young soldier and says, now make your choice. So a lot of background establishing Isaac. What did you guys think of this scene as a whole?
It's very effective. It's effective. It's efficient. It's impactful. It just felt like everything that it set out to do, it nailed. And Jeffrey Wright is also just like a force of nature on the screen at times, depending on the role, obviously, and what he's asked to do. He's always going to bring his A game to it no matter what. And Isaac is just, it's an interesting character. And I like that we're getting this, maybe let's say, side of him, and where the introduction is, I would say, somewhat sympathetic to him. I think it's easy for people to be sympathetic towards him, let's say, and that he's kind of, more of a man of the people. He's kind of, let's say, not, I mean, the word would be, I guess, rebelling against Fedra and kind of the oppressive environment that they have created. He's, immediately dismissive of the soldiers and the way that they're acting. He obviously doesn't stand for it. But then again, it's giving us this, he's very cold and calculated. He literally just pops 2 grenades into the truck with the people he was just hanging out with, and he doesn't really think twice about it. So I like I said, I just think very effective, very efficient, very impactful.
Yeah, love the cold opening scene. I think the thing I was confused about most is just when they're referring to the voters, are they referring to like the citizens of Washington who are under the federal control at that time? Okay.
That's how I took it. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good there. And then the only other comment I have for Hanrahan is we do see that WLF poster, like a poster in the background, I think, while they're talking. So we're kind of to assume that she is, WLF, or maybe one of the heads, higher ups at least, of WLF at that time. It seems like they were already in the process of being founded, or, currently existing when Isaac made the decision to turn on Fedra. Yeah. So definitely curious to see her role in all of this, if she is the head of WLF, or if Isaac maybe along the way got gifted the reins at some point, because to me it feels like Isaac would be, maybe not a good leader in terms of, sympathy or empathy, but maybe in terms of getting things done, he feels like he would be someone that could do that. So definitely interested to see the layout of the WLF and who all's running it.
Yeah, I mean, this episode as a whole, as we'll see later, paints Isaac as kind of this cold-blooded, decisive, albeit, strong force. And if we assume he's going to wind up kind of being a leader of the Wolves or what have you. You know, it remains to be seen. But Isaac, an interesting character for sure.
Wait,
Moving on.
I'm actually now thinking, can we clarify the quote from last episode? How many years was it that the prophet had been gone? It had been like 20 years or something, right? It wasn't just 11 years, right? Because this chick, I'm just making sure that this chick isn't the prophet, right? Like there's no way that timeline works out.
I'm looking at my notes. The prophet's been dead for 10 years is what I saw. And this would have been 11 years ago.
So this could be her technically, because I do believe they actually also referred to the prophet as a woman, right? In the last episode, if I'm remembering that correctly, like they kept saying she.
I guess technically from the stance that she's a woman and the timeline works out, but I'm arrogantly confident that
it's
this
not
woman
going to be
is
her.
not. No, she seems to be someone
Too
who's
normal.
in the WLF.
Oh, true. Duh.
Yeah. Although that could be interesting background of like, you know, within a year of him joining, there's some type of split, and
okay,
that's, you know, the way that the groups went, and obviously it's a drastic difference now, you know, 10 to 11 years later. That could be interesting to explore, but I feel like I'm going to plant a flag that it's no way that woman is the
yeah.
problem.
I totally just blanked on the fact that it's WLF, and you know that there's two parties there. I totally blanked on that, but possibility.
Well, no, it was good to point out because, like Kyle said, the timelines do match up. She is a woman. It's feel her love. She watches over me. So I'm getting feminine vibes from whoever the prophet is. But moving on, we don't see Isaac for a little bit because we have to catch up with Dina and Ellie 11 years later. So we're back to the current time, and they're just scavenging for supplies in this drugstore. And Dina kind of is like, all right, let me get a beat. I got to pee here. Let's stick a pin in that. She goes out of the drugstore, meets Ellie on her horse, and we get this kind of stamp, Seattle Day 1. And it's just Dina and Ellie chilling, riding horseback through the ruins of Seattle, I suppose. And they're kind of just like commenting on stuff they see, a little world building. I thought they bombed this place, which was one of the paths forward, I guess, after the outbreak. Let's just bomb New York. Let's bomb Seattle. Let's take out as many infected as we can. Apparently not this part of Seattle. They're seeing rainbow stuff all over. Wow. I wonder if everybody was just super optimistic back in the day. Of course, it was pride flags and pride, whatever, paraphernalia, if you will. And then they find this Fedra tank, which they explore, et cetera, et cetera. A little line about the Apollo 1 astronauts that burned up. And then kind of the meat of this is Dina on her binoculars spies a TV station, and on the main satellite, it's tagged WLF for the Wolves. Ellie, of course, wants to charge right in, and Dina's like, whoa. There's a giant banner saying Wolves are here. Don't you think they're going to be prepared for us? So why don't we take a beat, wait for nightfall, and then we can kind of sneak in and be smart about it, which brings us to the rundown music store because, of course, they got to let Shimmer get a beat, put her up for the night. And in the music store, we get this lovely rendition of Take On Me of The Magician's fame. Shout out Quentin Coldwater.
I mean, it's just so funny how this song continues to be just embedded in pop culture, and it's such a sad song. Yeah, and it really does. I don't know if, again, because of The Magicians, and it always will get to me of those thoughts, but it was also just really well portrayed here by Bella Ramsey. Definitely was feeling the emotions there, and I thought she crushed it. It was a great rendition.
It felt like a video game cutscene is how it kind of like the way that the shot was framed, and then like Dina coming in and Dina getting emotional and that stuff. And yeah, it's fun to get these kind of scenes of the two of them kind of finding their way. You know, it feels more maybe realistic than them being like mercenaries and like, you know, clearing blocks and going building to building. And you know, they kind of have lived in somewhat relative comfort. You know, obviously they're Jackson Hole and their lives are routined and regimented in a way, but they're really not used to being in this type of situation, you know, and obviously it shows through Ellie's banging the tank door, and you know, and Dina's kind of also, I think, took it the right way in that, like, okay, well, we achieved somewhat of a goal of finding out that there's no one in the area because someone would have heard that, you know, and things like that. So I've getting served is maybe the right way to say it on Reddit whenever I go on. That's like, you know, The Last of Us, like season 2 threads and things like that, because like you visited this community before, and it just, people seem to just have such a negative perspective on everything that happens in this show, where it's like they say like it's so unbelievable that these two would be able to survive in an apocalypse, but it's also like, yeah, like Ellie would have died without Joel. Joel got her to Jackson Hole, and then they live in the way that Jackson Hole goes. And we don't know anything about Dina, but like, yeah, that's the way that it is. Like they're supposed to be, at least to me, it feels like kind of inexperienced in a way, like they're kind of stumbling a little bit around. And then we'll get to later parts of this episode and where maybe they have hopefully maybe learned a couple lessons through the mistakes that they made in this episode and things like that. And I don't know. I thought all of this stuff worked for me. It was nice to get them kind of building their relationship, even though it kind of hits fucking turbo drive in about 4 scenes.
For sure. I would clap back on that with, while they are maybe inexperienced, they're way more equipped to handle situations like these and just surviving in general than any of the three of us are. You know, they've, one, just had to live in this world since birth, but two, even in Jackson Hole, Kyle, like you said, routines, regimented. These two were also kind of on, I'll use the term, the survey corps. Like, they were making these runs outside. They know how to handle infected, how to kind of navigate. Okay, are there enough that we can handle? How are we going to handle them? So, like, to speak to those people, those trolls on the Reddit board who I'll just say they've made up their mind they don't want to enjoy things, which is why they're going to the internet to just spout their toxicity. Like, you know, none of this is believable, but, you know, get yourself into the world. Have fun with it, man. Enjoy things. Enjoy life.
Yeah. It was something that was funny to me was people saying like it was so ridiculous that Dina started like lightly playing the drums because they had just talked about like Ellie making that loud noise. But I was like, the point of the loud noise was that Dina said, like, we know that no one's around now. Just again, with that, like you're saying, the perspective of people are going in with a perspective of hate. And then naturally that colors the way that you're viewing the things that are happening in the show. Because for me, I walked away from all these scenes and I was like, this is nice. I like this.
To be fair, I was also like, dang, Dina going right for the drums. Okay. Like, that's a weird choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the take on me, one of you said this plays like a cutscene in a video game, and it absolutely was. You're kind of exploring Seattle, and it's actually an optional cutscene. So I was like, oh dang, they're committing several minutes to this, but it makes sense. It's a very nice moment between Ellie and Dina, and you know, Dina maybe hasn't even seen that soft center to Ellie's exterior, and when she comes up, she's like, nah, keep going, I gotta see this, and she's just sitting there in awe. So it's a very beautiful moment between the two of them, and Bella flexing the pipe. So I ain't gonna knock it. And then it's just a smash cut from this lovely rendition of Take on Me to Isaac torturing a prisoner, and yeesh, they show us the whole dang thing. I mean, it's him just kind of, you can tell he's talking to someone while he's talking about this cookware, the Mauvier, like nice French pots and pans. And he's like, when I was a chef, I always dreamed of it. One of the perks of the apocalypse, I can just go into a store and get them. And you're like, who is this guy talking to? Because clearly the guy he's talking to is in trouble. And then the camera pans and it's like, oh, this poor guy's in a whole world of trouble. Stripped naked, like this guy's in rough shape. But this whole back and forth between Isaac and what we find out to be a Seraphite is actually a good bit of world building, because it tells us, you know, the Wolves and the Seraphites, if we didn't already know, they do not like each other. They're kind of fighting and in a standing feud with each other. But what did you guys think of this kind of entire scene?
HBO ain't cowards, I'll say that right now.
Ooh, never has been.
That
What
was
about
full
the
male frontal nudity, baby.
I was also here. We are for the Avatar: The Last Airbender. We got the Zhangs and the Ganjins here with the. We don't even know what started the fight. We're just sitting here bickering because it was you guys that didn't know. It was you guys, and we need some Aang in here to clarify this backstory. But no,
widely accepted as the worst Avatar: The Last Airbender episode of all time is that one, the gorge or the rift or whatever it is.
Not even close, to be honest. I love that episode personally.
So do I. I love them all. But off the pod, I don't want to rabbit hole. You show me an episode that is worse than that. You can't.
I'll think of one.
Exist.
I'll think of one. There's a few from season 1 that I'm not crazy on, to be honest. There's a few from season 1. But yeah, we will table that for another time. But I will to go back into what we were talking about. Like you said, I mean, this setup for Isaac's character was so amazing. I mean, we already saw the grit and the hardness to his exterior before, and then we get this again a little bit kind of like what Kyle was saying with Ellie, a little bit of softness, because he is talking about how he had these dreams of becoming a chef, and he's very intelligent, obviously, and with the copper and the materials that were a part of these pans, and seems like he, had a normal life prior and had these aspirations, but something tragically went wrong along the way, as things would in a zombie apocalypse. But wow, this was just a great continuation of Isaac's character, I think, for these scenes. Again, just so many questions on the actual backstory between the Seraphites and the WLF. And shout out to both sides. I mean, again, Jeffrey Wright just playing this badass character, but then and being very intimidating. Me in that situation, I'm caving at any point. But kudos to the Scar, who was also playing into it, who offered his hand out before Jeffrey could even get to the second one, or I should say Isaac. And Jeffrey. I thought this was an amazing scene, to be honest. This was one of my favorite scenes of the season so far.
Yeah, Isaac pretty much stole the episode. This scene combined with the cold open. I mean, it's such an impactful introduction and shift, let's say, in the story. And yeah, he's just they did a good job. And again, obviously, I have no idea what he's like in the video games, but they've done such a good job in a little amount of time. It's 2 scenes of kind of giving us this characterization of him. I think like the fact that he realizes immediately when the Seraphite sticks out his hand for the second one, of just like, okay, like I don't need to just torture this guy to get enjoyment out of it for myself. Like I'm not going to get any more benefit out of this, so I'm just going to kill this guy. I mean, say what you will about the killing and things like that, but I feel like that again was just showing us a little bit into his character as well, and that he's not really just going to torture this guy to torture him. He really genuinely wants the information that he has. And it was also interesting in that I don't know how much I was anticipating the Seraphites being kind of this like mobilized fighting force in a way, because he wants the information of like, when is the next attack going to happen? And that's because we got the introduction to them through this, maybe let's say clan or tribe or whatever their terminology might be for the smaller subsects of the society that was kind of trying to escape the violence, and trying to get away from it. And then it failed because they were killed. But I'm just, kind of curious now to get more of kind of the internal workings of the Seraphites as well, because it seems like it's really a military, a very violent conflict that is going on. And we'll get into it more. And when we talk about Ina, Ellie and Dina and them kind of going through what they go through. But I just thought that was interesting to me, and that it really seems, it's like a very, very big violent struggle where it kind of the introduction to the Seraphites didn't feel like maybe it would be that way. So we'll see. It definitely, they're, as we see at the end of the episode too, it's really Ellie and Dina inserting themselves and their personal conflict into this very organized, large conflict,
long-standing conflict.
Yes, exactly. Seems like there's really no reconciliation going on there. So that'll be interesting to see how those two things weave going forward.
Yeah, definitely. It's setting the backdrop for, okay, what's been going on in Seattle while we've all been in Jackson Hole. And a couple of quick things. because they're firing back and forth, this Scar and Isaac, they both insinuate that the other side has killed children on the other side, to which Isaac says, well, you taught your children to kill us. Like, we now had to be on our toes that a Seraphite children would try and kill us. And he said, well, we only did that because you broke the truce. So they're killing each other's kids. There was a truce that was broken. Who knows who did it first? Even Isaac says, don't get into this chicken or the egg stuff with me. That's not what this is about. I just want to know when the next attack is going to be. And this Seraphite, who, all respect to him for holding his ground, he has his mic drop moment where he says, you guys won't win. And Isaac says, we have machine guns in hospitals. You guys have bow and arrows. What do you mean we're not going to win? And he says, every single day, wolves are coming to join the Seraphites. The same cannot be said vice versa. Your numbers are shrinking while ours are growing. And that is part of the reason Isaac eventually says, I'm not getting anything from this guy. Boom, you're dead. And that's kind of the scene there.
Yeah, I really liked that part of it, that the thing you just mentioned about the wolves becoming Seraphites and it not happening vice versa. I hope that that's something that maybe we can explore a little more. I mean, the Wolves currently run Seattle. Have they just turned themselves into, a newer version of Fedra with Isaac at the lead, is what's actually happening there and things like that. So I'm very interested, and I'm really glad that there is this. I don't even want to say it's a B plot, because now it's kind of interwoven into everything that's happening with Ellie and Dina as well. Because it's very interesting. It doesn't seem like it's something that's like an afterthought. It will be a well incorporated part of the story going forward.
Right. That's the thing about post-apocalyptic pseudo-militaristic groups, man. You either die the hero or you stick around long enough to see yourself become the villain. Fedra's out. Yeah. Wolves take their place, man. Who's better?
I wonder what the Seraphites' selling point is. Like, what is making all these WLF people willing to leave? Because from what we learned prior to, I guess, learning about this conflict, is, to me, it felt like the WLF were in a good spot in terms of they have a society, functioning people, they're working together, so that begs the question to me is, where did it go wrong?
It seems like the Seraphites can sell you on kind of the comfort of religion. They have this prophet that's watching over you, so it's, people gravitate to that. And like Kyle said, the first scene that we saw them kind of on their front, they seem almost like a pacifist group, trying to avoid conflict if they can. So they can just say, whoa, we're only doing this violence out of defense because we got to protect ourselves from the wolves, right? So, there's definitely a sell to be made there to convert a wolf. But anything else for this interrogation scene?
No, but I did like the callback to the guy from the opening scene where he's still around with Isaac, that OG Fender soldier who he took out of the car, and he has been, let's
clearly
say, indoctrinated,
battle hardened as well now at this point.
Isaac, he
doesn't have any sympathy, for this guy. So
he also clearly hates Seraphites.
Yeah, while the other guy was kind of like, damn, what's going on in there?
Or if nothing else, this guy unflinchingly will follow Isaac and just justify whatever he's doing. So is it a respect for him? Does he actually buy in? Who knows? But they've been together for 11 years, clearly. So moving on, we return to Dina and Ellie, who are under the cover of nightfall entering this TV station, and right when they walk in, they are greeted by a wolf with like 7 arrows in his chest, and it's like, well, that's nice, it can't be any worse. Oh god. As they progress through this TV station, and we see some of the handiwork of these Seraphites. Also, Isaac established in the interrogation that he was calling them scars, and the prisoner corrected him and said Seraphite. So that is kind of what's the word for it?
derogatory,
derogatory
slur.
term that the Wolves are calling the Seraphites is the scars, obviously, to their cheek scars. Not very important, but in this TV station, we see seemingly the handiwork of the scars painted in blood. Feel her love, their iconic symbol on the wall, and yeah, it's just wolves hanging from the rafters with their intestines out. So if you thought our Seraphites were pacifists, think again.
Yeah, they can definitely get down and dirty.
Yeah, I want to meet some Seraphite warriors. Like we said, we've kind of only met people that maybe might be more pacifist, so I want to meet more of these warrior type Seraphites. And again, it's still maybe becoming that question of, is there room for Ellie and Dina to work with them in any way? Will the Seraphites maybe could be more accepting of them potentially? I think the Wolves in a vacuum could be as well. I don't know if they would necessarily deny recruits, and Ellie and Dina obviously have skills that could be beneficial to an organization like them, but Ellie and Dina, I don't think would do that, so will they kind of maybe learn something about the Wolves from the Seraphites, whether it's tactics, whether it's mentality, whether it's all of these things, it seems like there's potential there.
And I feel like in the way that the WLF soldiers were killed too, I feel like with cults like this, that, death for them always has like a meaning, and the fact that all of these soldiers had, their guts pulled out. I don't know if there's some deeper meaning inside that is in line with what their religious views are. That's kind of where my mind was going, because I mean, they were hanging and they could have just left them hanging, but they did also, I don't know if it was before or after, split their stomachs open. So we'll see what that in turn means. But it's funny because I was thinking, even in the last episode when Dina had seen all the bodies and was throwing up, like I didn't even say it, but here also it kind of shocked me that Dina is puking from all this because of her experience. Like, we know she's killed, like, I don't know about hundreds, but a lot of clickers at least. And so she has seen some shit, I'm sure. So this was definitely the time that I was like, okay, it's weird that Dina is puking from all this still, while Ellie, I mean, it's horrifying, don't get me wrong. I'm sure it smells atrocious as well. But, Ellie also was handling it better, I guess you could say. While she was shocked to see what she was seeing, but Dina vividly throwing up, and we'll get into that. But we know why now, that she was sick to her stomach at those scenes.
I have not myself, obviously, been in an operating room when this has happened, but I've heard from very reliable sources that bowel perforation, so getting a little cut going on in your gut and your stomach tends to smell very disgusting. So
yeah,
I can only imagine what that room was cooking up. It was large, so maybe, it was kind of spreading slightly. It wasn't necessarily oppressive, but I can only imagine what it smelled like in there.
Well, we find out later via Ellie that those windows were not open, so no aeration coming through, just all the stank getting trapped in there. Kyle, that's a very interesting tidbit. I would imagine that smell just lingered and marinated.
Oh, yeah. It'll stank.
Gross.
Very gross, of course, but we don't get too much time to be able to think about what we're seeing, because we hear kind of some whispers, some doors slamming, and a squad of wolves just proceeds into the TV station, and we're hearing, their officer saying, cut them down, sweep the place nice and slow. Anybody you see, man, woman, child, I don't care. Like, we got to get these scars. Shoot on sight. I don't care that Isaac wants prisoners. Kill these bastards, essentially, which Dina and Ellie are like, oh crap, we're here now. And they're hiding. And I just have to say it right now, they did a very good job. This is like a mission in the game. Kind of just even the layout of this TV station is like, oh, damn, I remember playing this. This is so cool. So that's my little video game part of this. And it is like really a stealth thing. So I think they emphasize that with Dina like hiding and Ellie kind of very quietly doing her thing. But very well done here. Ellie goes upstairs while Dina is kind of hiding, tries to jimmy open the window, is unsuccessful, and she actually has to wrestle with one of the wolves that she finds. Dina winds up bailing her out, but they have to shoot out a window and kind of skedaddle out the fire escape out the back window. This whole scene, actually, I knew what was coming, and I was still kind of on the edge of my seat because, much like in the video game, it all just kind of happens on you while you're kind of like exploring, looking at the massacre that is before you of the people hanging from the ceilings. And then the wolves come in and you're like, oh crap, now I have a different problem to deal with. But what did you guys think about how this whole thing played out?
Shout out to Dina's resourcefulness as always. That's what I'll start with.
Yeah, I mean, it was like what is going to happen here? I could have seen it going a lot of different ways. I'm fairly confident that Ellie was not going to die, but being captured, does Dina die? Does Dina get captured? Like there was a lot of different ways for this to go, and it was definitely like edge of my seat, nerve-wracking type of television. So at this point in the episode, I was like, damn, yeah, oh my god, like this is a good episode, man. Like I'm loving it.
I was definitely freaking out for Dina here. I mean, I to me, Ellie feels safe. We'll see how that plays out with the upcoming seasons and whatnot, but I was worried for Dina. Dina feels like someone that unfortunately is expendable in terms of getting a meaningful death out of the show. I mean, obviously she's not expendable in the show because she is so resourceful, as we've always been saying for her. But I was worried, Ran, because and we've also had this conversation, I think, in episode 1 when she first gets introduced as, things are going really well between her and Ellie, but we do live in this post-apocalyptic world. Could something potentially ever happen to Dina? And now we're on that path of it's her and Ellie walking this revenge path. Does Dina get caught up in the crossfire? Is that something that will make Ellie get more upset with the WLF and want to kill them all? Or does it make her kind of retract and say, shit, I'm now putting my goals at the cost of my friends' lives, my lover's life, if you want to go that far. I worry for Dina, man, in these upcoming episodes. I don't want her to die, but they could definitely do it to us, and I'm scared.
I feel even more after this episode that I feel fairly confident that she's going to die. I would almost go on to say that I don't even know if she's going to last through this season.
No, I don't want that.
What are you more arrogantly confident about? That Dina's going to die, or that the woman we met at the beginning of the episode isn't the prophet?
The second one for sure, but I'm still feeling fairly confident about Dina.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's going to happen, it's going to hurt, man, because Ellie just lost Joel. I know she still has some friends, back in Jackson Hole, but Dina is more than just a friend, and this would truly, truly break her, and I don't know how she would get up from such a loss like that to her. So
yeah,
we'll see how it plays out.
Jumping ahead, because I guess I don't want to maybe forget it, and we're having the conversation now, but it just feels like the things that they've introduced in this episode, and also the fact that like Dina is still super revenge minded as well. She wants to, like, they talk about, I think before they even get into the TV station, of like, if we run into Jackson Hole wolves, like what is the deal? Right. And I took the look as like we wouldn't hesitate to kill them, really.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And they don't really hesitate to kill them, although Ellie tries to kind of knock the guy out a little bit. But so like if they're both in that mindset going forward, like what is the catalyst for them changing? Because again, I'm operating under the assumption that I don't think the story is going to be that like Ellie gets their revenge and it's like we all feel good about it and then it ends. Right. I feel like it's gonna be a story about how like we can become better than that. And it feels like everything that happened this episode just makes me feel like Dina is gonna be,
and it's
that event is gonna be what Ellie needs to happen is a bad way to say it, but like is what's gonna make her learn the lesson finally that like you have to step outside of this cycle, and maybe viewing too everything that's happening with the Scar. Or, I'm sorry, I apologize for the Seraphites and the Wolves. Of like maybe getting an objective view on that cycle of hatred. I mean, maybe she again, shacks up with some Seraphites, and she learns about the conflict and realizes that it's literally just been an eye for 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 a decade plus, and no one is any better off because of it, So sadly, Dina might be our teacher.
Was just going to make that correlation too, as you were kind of talking, that what Ellie, Dina are going through with Joel and Abby specifically, the Seraphites and WF feel like there is a much bigger and extended scale of what they are going through.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, to me also, I'm agreeing with you that it doesn't feel like Ellie's just going to simply get her revenge and everyone's happy. Like, I don't think, the WLF or the Seraphites, one of those sides is going to come out on top. I believe that in some way we live together as one. ELE, baby.
Yeah. And we're not getting a joint custody of Dina and Jesse's baby with 3 parents.
I forgot about that.
That's what I think too, of like things that happen in this episode. I'm just like, it's not gonna happen. I cannot imagine that scenario.
Well, does the baby get born and then it's Jesse and Ellie's responsibility to take care of the baby, or is the baby going out with Dina?
Wow, Ellie then becomes the transporter of the cargo back to safety to Jackson Hole. That'd be pretty wild.
Yeah, and it's just her becoming Joel.
But again, and two, I can even envision a scene where it's like Dina steps in to save Ellie, and we get the reverse of this episode where like Dina is pointing the gun at Ellie, being like, "Don't make this any harder than it needs to be," and it's just Ellie sitting there being like, "Holy crap, I have to make this decision," and then we're all thinking, "Oh man, season 2, episode 4,"
Yeah, the signs were there.
Yeah, we got really ahead of ourselves there, but.
Yeah, you guys are rooting so bad for Dina to die so you can be validated in your theories.
Yep. That's where I'm at.
I like Dina. I hope she sticks around. We'll have to wait and see. Buckle up, baby. Anyway, going back to the TV station, they flee out the back window, sprinting, hit a dead end, and they're able to kind of crawl through some rubble in a doorway. The wolves are pursuing them, and we find out that rubble will take them out to a subway station. So they're there just kind of taking a beat when they hear wolves coming in, and these wolves start lighting these red flares and lighting up the subway station. And oh boy, do we get a little bit of that cordyceps tingle. I'll tell you what, kind of the cordyceps growth coming out of the ground wasn't so much of a narrative device in the video games, almost at all. Kind of this hive mind, if these cordyceps are here reacting to something, then a horde will come. But I think it's been so effective in the TV show. So that's one thing that they kind of played up for the TV show that's really been working for me. So I kind of want to emphasize that. But that's kind of what tees off the horde. And the wolves are saying,
terrifying. It's terrifying that that's a possibility. They even say, like, I thought it was clear, like they're just whipping these things around and, one flare hits the wrong thing. And it's like, okay, now we have 100, like we're about to die literally because of that, because someone's getting a call.
It feels like you can never truly be 100% clear in uncharted territory. And even in charted territory, as we saw in Jackson Hole, I mean, they were in charted territory and there were tendrils, cordyceps popping out of the ground.
It was so probably the most charted territory in the area.
Yeah,
for sure.
I do love the idea of these cordyceps though. And again, just I wish that they could kind of talk about, more scientifically of, was it the light that triggered him? Is it just the fact that the cordyceps are hearing these noises or, and reacting to the people around them? But it's so terrifying just knowing I would never want to leave like the safety of my own house after like even in just inspecting every inch of the house to make sure that there's no possibility that I get discovered here. So such a terrifying aspect. And Alki and I always talk about it when we're watching and we see clickers. We're just like, this is legitimately like the worst zombie apocalypse you could ever like live in. And it's just between the fact that these zombies like run and they adapt and like they get stronger with time, it's just the worst. I would never do well here.
I have always naively said that if there was a zombie apocalypse, that was just level 1 Nazi zombies, like push them over, they're dead.
Yeah.
That would low key kind of be fun. Not fun, but like
all things considered, like, if you didn't have a
I would
choice.
embrace it, you know, if I didn't
If
have a
we
choice,
knew there
I
was
would
like a
embrace
time limit to it, yes, I would embrace it as well. But it's the not knowing what's coming is,
We
how
are
long
all
is it going to
picking a
last?
sword out of Luke's
Oh yeah,
collection, and
100%.
we're just being a band of samurais or something. I don't know. There's a universe out there where that is our
And
reality.
then we start scarring our cheeks, and we go by scars, and we're just.
Who's the prophet? You, Dave?
Oh, always. I'm always the prophet. If you, as by my Wheel of Time predictions, if you're still
Okay.
lingering from the Binge Empire Wheel of Time coverage, you should know that I am a prophet.
Yeah.
The thing about this scene in the subway, though, that maybe irritated me or annoyed me the most is that right when you start hearing the infected gurgles and screams, and you're those wolf troops, get out of there. Like, they're just standing in place like statues. I thought this was clear. Apparently not. Let's just stand here for another 2 minutes and really let them get close. I was like, guys, get out of there. Have some survival instincts. But that wasn't the point of this scene. They were never supposed to live. Dina's doing her close her eyes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Turns out there's 75 of them. So
Yeah.
Dina, maybe get your count up, girl. But
Yeah.
they are quickly overwhelmed by this horde, and it's very well shot, against this red backdrop of the flares, all the colors. Ellie and Dina are very quickly kind of swarmed into this subway car, and they're just kind of traversing through skeletons, infected are pouring in through the windows, through the emergency exits, whatever. And it was just a really cool action sequence, in my opinion. Buzzer beater getting out of the roof. Dina, I wish I could have shared my height with her, because watching this poor girl try and jump to the roof was like insane. Another one where I was like, they're going to make it out, but boy, I am a little bit concerned for them. They do make it out. They have to climb a fence, so they kind of get a little bit of a reprieve from the horde. And then it's this turnstile scene where Dina gets caught and Ellie has to throw her arm in the way and take the bite, thus revealing her secret. But in the moment, Dina's like, Ellie just did the thing for me. Wow, she sacrificed herself, which is, pretty powerful thing to do. But walk me through what you guys are thinking through these scenes.
Dina's
was dead.
Pissing me off, man. She kept like hesitating and like getting like starstruck by the horde that was there. And I was like, girl, if you don't get moving, I'm about to fucking jump through my TV screen and push you up this staircase.
There's an argument to be said when you're on kind of a mission like this, where you would almost want to be alone and either be Ellie or Dina and not have to worry about the second person in your squad. And in a scenario like this, like, Ellie kind of had to be like, Dina, let's get moving. Come on. Because she was frozen in place, much like the soldiers. But previously, Ellie would have been cooked if Dina didn't bail her out by shooting the wolf guard. So, like, you need someone to watch your back, but sometimes you just want to be alone so you can be quick. And I've been thinking that through this whole, pretty much since Dina and Ellie went on this. Like, when would it be beneficial to just be a lean and mean, like, one singular person? When is it beneficial to have the pair? But it's on and off there. But I agree. Dina, not the best look.
I was just like, oh my God, man. I get the adrenaline, the anxiety. Like, it was hitting 100 out of 100 in this moment with like the turnstile getting stuck. And I was like, oh, this is going to be like they get the last look at each other. And Dina's like, this is my last stand. Like, I love you. I was going to be like riding in the streets, but we get out of it. And it, as a device for like the truth to come out for Ellie, I think it was just like, and then plus again, the action and the anxiety that it created, like, it was just like a very well drawn up scenario.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore.
Oof. And they do get out of it. It's raining in Seattle at nighttime, so they come right out of the subway, go across the street. It's an abandoned theater that they're like, okay, let's just make camp for the night, whatever. So they secure that. And Ellie is greeted with a gun in her face because Dina, of course, is like, all right, well, you're cooked. Let's just do this thing. And I'm thinking to myself, well, hold on. It takes a couple hours. You're not going to give Ellie a little time to make her peace with everything and maybe have a heart to heart before she kicks the bucket. But of course, Ellie is immune. And in a world like we all know Ellie is immune, but like someone you've known for years just kind of whipping this nugget of information out, and it's like
it's a last ditch effort to stay alive. It's you trying to
exactly
in denial. You're in denial.
in this society. Not many people have come across Ellie. It is most likely their belief it's impossible to be immune. So
Yep.
convincing Dina, I'm sure a lot of people were like, she's immune, just believe her. It's like not that simple.
Yeah, it's really not. No.
But again, I mean, there's definitely a part of Dina that wants to believe her too. So she allows her to kind of concoct the plan of, let me chill on this little seat over here, and then you can just watch me, and then I'll show you that I won't turn. And I liked that you could tell like Dina's eyes were like all dark underneath, like baggy, like trying to stay awake of watching her throughout all of it. And it just, I mean, I can't imagine being in either of the positions, because I can totally see Dina's perspective of like, don't even talk to me. Like, you're going to make it harder. If we have this heart to heart and you make peace with things, like, please just let me just kill you. So we don't need to have this. Oh man, the past 5 years have been so great and all this stuff, like I don't need that on my conscience. I'll think about that stuff in the aftermath.
Yeah, no, this was an intense scene for sure. I was curious as to know why the director's choice of having Ellie wake up and not showing Dina's face right away, because to me, Ellie wakes up and I'm almost expecting someone else to be sitting there, because she's flashing the light at Ellie and we can't like 100% see her face. So in the moment, I'm like, okay, that's not Dina, that's someone else that's here. And then I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, maybe we're in a dream sequence that the light gets turned off and it's just like Abby, and we're in a dream here, and she's having fever dreams from being bitten. I was just that part kind of confused me. I think it was maybe the choice of doing it to kind of just let the viewer kind of marinate in the emotions of what Ellie's feeling, and then we kind of see what exactly Ellie was feeling what Dina was feeling when she turns off the lights, because it is that look of worry and just, I've been up all night. She's tired and exhausted, but she is kind of happy at the same time. I just thought I was literally, the light goes on and I'm like, that's not Dina. That can't possibly be Dina. But then we do see the jacket a little bit. I'm like, okay, it's Dina. But it was weird to me that they blurred her face out for a little bit there.
Yeah. We get the dramatic switch to the lantern light.
Yeah, exactly.
She was like, all right, what do we got here?
It was very like Argus Filch in Sorcerer's Stone, just oozing the forbidden section. It's like, girl, why do you have a lantern? What? Did you bring oil on this trip? And also, why are you just dropping that? Like, anyway, I kind of took note of that too, because it was an interesting choice having her kind of creep up with the lantern. But this kind of takes us to the pregnancy reveal, which I'm curious, did that kind of hit like a ton of bricks for you two? Were you expecting it?
I was not expecting it personally. I mean, obviously looking back on the episode, she has to go to the bathroom. They're in the pharmacy. I mean, the pieces were there for us to kind of assume this, but no, this was definitely like, oh my God, I was not expecting this. And my thoughts were kind of like what Ellie's were thinking. It's like, girl, what are you doing out here if you're pregnant? Like, I guess she didn't know when she left necessarily, so that's fine too. Right. But it's like, this is definitely, and it goes into what you were just saying, B-Toms, of, what is the balance of having a good, like a group? Is it riding solo, but then you don't have someone watching your back? But if you bring someone along, then you have to worry about them. Now you're worrying about them and their child. This is definitely a huge obstacle. Unfortunately, it's an obstacle. Obviously, normally childbirth would be a miraculous thing. We'd all be very happy, but this is an obstacle in this situation, and we don't know how it's going to impact Dina going forward. We obviously have seen her experiencing the sickness, and when they're in these dire situations, how well is she going to be able to hold up? And I don't know how long we're going to be out here either. Are we going to be fighting the WF for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? The longer we're out here, that's more of an issue that the pregnancy becomes, so we're also now on a time limit, it feels like to me.
This is, I think, to me, where the episode went downhill. Again, I said it last episode, I want I wanted Ellie and Dina to hook up. I
Mhm.
just think the progression of Ellie telling Dina that she's immune, into Dina telling Ellie that she's pregnant, into Ellie, I was gonna say finger banging, but I know that people won't like that. But going left hand strong down south. It just like all those things in all the succession, it just felt like it was like almost too much. And again, it's very emotional for them, in this moment of Dina thought she was gonna have to kill her, finds out that she's immune, and now we're saying all this stuff, but it felt like the immunity part got completely shuffled under the rug, and that just felt odd to me. And that feels like, I don't want to say the cornerstone of the story, but it's such a big part of Ellie's character. And then like the next morning, the conversation kind of, it was really just everything. It felt like to me mostly about the pregnancy and then Jesse and I liked that we got the little bit of look into Dina's past and kind of the tense scene last episode that we called out of like, it felt weird that Dina did that to her and that she was kind of teasing her, and then it kind of shuts it down. And we learn here it's more of kind of like a habitual, maybe defense mechanism because of the way that she grew up and that she was told pretty much you can't be a lesbian. Mm-hmm. So this is the way that she's kind of lived her life. And I don't know, it just felt like a weird tone. And I was thinking totally too of like, she just got bit and now we're getting intimate, and it felt like everything happened in a weird way to me. And I was just kind of thinking more about like the logistics and all that stuff versus like the emotion of the scene.
I was also a little surprised at how quickly it progressed, mostly because I'd be like, okay, Ellie, you're immune. I get it. But how about we socially distance for like a month or so just to be safe? Like I wouldn't go right for it like same day,
Yeah. She at least went with the other arm,
Sure.
So
yeah, sure. I mean, I don't want to break down the play-by-play there. It was, the point is they take a step forward in their relationship. They do get intimate, like you said, and it was all quick. But I think the next morning, Ellie asks Dina, why now? Which I guess meant, why are you telling me the pregnancy thing now? Which she would have only figured out that morning. But Dina says, well, I was kind of, I thought I lost you, with that whole nonsense in the subway when you got bit, and this dream that I had kind of been building up in my head, me, you, this kid, like having a home together. And I thought I lost that whole thing, and I didn't even know if you would want any of that. And Ellie responds, I would want it with you. And it's like, oh, you are so in, Ellie.
And Dina's gonna be out soon.
Oh, yeah, if you two have
maybe
your
9
way.
months. Maybe 9 months if we think she has the baby and then passes away and Ellie has to.
Yeah. No, I'm with you guys. The escalation of it all did feel a little weird, but I can't lie. I mean, it was funny too, seeing Ellie be so awkward with the whole like, so how does this work with like Jesse? Like, is Jesse the dad? Like, we're just like a happy love triangle. Like, what? I was kind of cracking up there, but it did also, I'm with you. It felt, I don't want to say rushed because again, we had been getting those signs last episode, like you had mentioned, Kyle, of like her teasing Ellie. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's totally misogynistic of me to say this, but I was thinking maybe it's the pregnancy of the pregnancy. She's pregnant. She's got emotions, and I don't know.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, like I said too, like I could totally get the perspective of this is a moment of incredibly high emotions because literally Dina thought she was gonna have to shoot Ellie in the head. Ellie's secret is now out there. All of this stuff happening. It just felt like, whoa. There's a lot going on, and then like I said too, the immunity thing, I assume that we'll talk about it in going forward, and the pregnancy.
They have to.
Those will be central parts of their interactions potentially going forward and stuff like that. It just felt like within the context of just this episode, it was just kind of like, whoa, okay, that's where we're gonna end off on basically.
You're right. I mean, the fact that she admits she's immune, I mean, they've never since this outbreak occurred, have ever heard of someone being immune. And Dina's like, we're kind of sweeping it under the rug a little bit. Like, we're not really talking about like how much Ellie is, how important she is. We're kind of we're getting right into the banging, which again, we're happy for. We wanted Dina and Ellie to be together, but priorities, man. We got an immune chick on our side. We need to deal with this.
It felt like they gave us a 5-course meal, and I was anticipating, I could only handle one, course at a time, and I'm trying to sit there now with 3 plates, trying to enjoy everything that's happened, and I couldn't possibly do it all.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a me problem. That's not a show problem. Maybe that's a me problem.
Yeah,
I was
still happy though for them.
Potentially bad metaphor. I will never complain if I get served more food than I was anticipating, but it is what it is. Nonetheless, it hit like a ton of bricks, and it was a lot happening. Maybe from just a TV running standpoint, they didn't mind dropping it all at once because us, the audience, already knew about the immunity, so that shouldn't have been so shocking. But the pregnancy was really the big reveal to the audience, and then getting into the heads of Ellie and Dina. Dina might have been holding that information all night. Do I tell her? Do I not? And then when she woke up, I would think the rationale was, well, she just told me this massive secret and it seems to check out. I'm going to confide in her with this other secret. Also, who else is she going to tell? Clearly it's going to come out. They're together, only the two of them in Seattle. It's like, okay, I got to tell Ellie what the situation is. I'm preggers now. That changes things. Mm-hmm. All of that to say,
for their relationship, that it's all, the honesty is fully out there now.
Right.
For sure.
It definitely was a little bit of whiplash. This was a very busy last, 10 minutes just from the subway scene on. But yeah, they have this kind of pillow talk the morning after. Things are going well. They're having a lovely time eating jerky. And then we glanced over it. Dina took a walkie-talkie off of one of the wolf's bodies at the TV station, and the walkie-talkie starts squawking. And we just hear, scars broke through. We're bringing our wounded to Lake Hill. Tell Nora to get ready. Woo, Ellie's ears perk up. Nora, I know that name. I've said it every night before bed. Not actually. That's an Arya Stark reference. That would be cool, though. Anyway, they do recognize the name Nora as one of the group that was in Jackson Hole. So they're like, all right, this is it. We got to follow this lead. They go up to the roof and they see explosions in the distance. Bang, bang. Dina's like, well, that's Lake Hill, Ellie. So that we're heading right into that. And Ellie kind of looks over at Dina, and already Ellie is like, you don't have to come. You probably shouldn't. And she says, look, things are different now. Like, this information changes things. And seemingly Dina, kind of reaches out, holds the hand and says, nah, we're doing this together. So that leaves us with this shot on the roof with Seattle in the distance, explosions, and that's going to be our episode.
Yeah, I mean, we're in for more action. They're just diving right into the middle of this conflict, like we said. So from that perspective, I'm totally satisfied. I think there's only 3 episodes left too in this season, which is kind of crazy to think about. So
that is crazy.
Yeah, I could be wrong. It might be 4. This was episode 4, right?
Yes. Yeah. So 5, 6, 7, 8. So 4.
8. So okay, we have 4 left. Well, that's even better.
Cool.
That's an extra one right there. So yeah, I mean, and we're hopefully getting into, like I had mentioned, I guess it must have been episode 2 of like, I hope it's, we get like a bad guy of the week of each of these wolf members that were there at the lodge, where it's like, okay, maybe Nora's number 1 on our list, and we'll get to her next episode, and we'll start, working our way down the line as we move forward.
Yeah, doesn't feel like we'll be having any time skip soon. It feels like each episode, I don't know if they're going to do, next episode is going to be day 2, or if it will be day 2 and 3 in next episode, but I don't imagine we'll be jumping time anytime soon. I am just so obsessed with this Isaac and Seraphite storyline. I am genuinely so excited to find out more about what's going on between them and how it gets wrapped up, hopefully peacefully. And yeah, I just don't want Dina to die. That'll be the last things I kind of end on, but it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Well, maybe they get some whack way where Ellie's the way that she's immune, and they do something right at the moment of conception, so then the baby is also immune, and they figure it out that way, and then they're like, oh, this is how we make everyone immune, and they just move forward that way. And Dina and Ellie usher The Last of Us into our next era of immunity.
Well, I think we can just stop the podcast going forward right there. Kyle figured out the whole show.
That's the other option. That's the other option beyond the one that we talked about earlier. I can only see two possible options.
Okay.
And maybe I'm rooting on that second one. But I will say, Dave, I agree with the Wolves Seraphites stuff. Dare I say, looking back, just like sitting here thinking, we just talked about the whole episode, thinking back to me watching the episode, like I'm almost more excited for Isaac's next scene than any other scene in the whole show at this point.
Well, I'll tell you what, there was a vacuum left by the absence of Pedro Pascal. It's just that show stealing, I'll say, male lead of the show. So if that turns into Jeffrey Wright, that would kind of smooth over some of the absence or the vacuum that was left. And
you know what? The last thing I'll say, my final comment will just be, we'll start the counter. It's been one episode since we've seen Jackson Hole.
True.
So we'll see.
There you go. And I guess I'll take us home here, unless Dave, you have anything else?
That's going to be it from me.
Cool. Yeah, I'll take us home. This, from a video game perspective, I think was done very well. This was, obviously in the games, they go to Seattle too. So this was kind of covering the first, several hours of gameplay in Seattle. And I think they hit several things very, very well. The subway scene with the red flares was out of the video game. A little bit different, but I think they shot it excellently. I already said the TV station, like, copy and paste that thing right out of the video game. I think they brought it to life very, very well. What was the other thing? Just the beginning scenes of them on horseback, kind of just traveling, exploring the city of Seattle. Again, just right out of the video game. So I think they did all of that stuff very, very well, as they've been doing pretty much for the longevity of this series. So maybe a slower episode, albeit with one of the best action sequences of that subway scene. But yeah, I kind of agree with your guys' analysis. Maybe Dave was a little bit higher. Kyle, you said at the beginning it was maybe an uneven episode. And I think that's a valid thing to say about it. But love it or hate it, that is our episode 4 of The Last of Us. As always, if you like what you heard, hit that follow or subscribe button and give us 5-star rating if you feel so inclined over here on Binge Empire, and check us out on our other feeds. That's going to be Unreal, The Core, Final Form, Dark and Twisted, and you can follow those on Spotify, YouTube, the Apple Podcast app, or wherever else you may find your podcast. Once again, we as a whole are Bingetown TV, and thank you so much for listening.